A lot of AC available. Homes had AC, but there were no common rectifier tubes. There was no Type 80, so you had to make DC. You could use a motor generator set like this, made great DC, very pure, but very expensive. You could use banks and banks of B batteries, which a lot of people did. There's probably two sets there. There's uh, 60 or 70 batteries making 2 volts apiece, so there's you could get some nice B plus. The batteries are frightfully expensive and always had to be charged. So a lot of people just bit the bullet and they made their own rectifier, and they're called slot jar rectifiers because you would go down the kitchen and you steal all these jelly jars from your mother's cupboard, and somewhere, I don't know, but you found zinc and aluminum plates, and you put those all together, alternating zinc, aluminum, zinc, aluminum. And then you got borax, which was a common household cleaner, and you put that in the jars, and then you fill them with water, and then you prayed a lot through the switch, and these things would start bubbling and what have you, and you start making DC. Well, that's how early amateurs made DC. You had about 1 microfarad of filtering on it, and that was it. This transmitter was on the air every weekend from W2, from the museum here, W2AN, but it got really too much to handle. The rectifier was just completely, it just took constant maintenance, so they just stopped using it probably over, well, it was never used in my time, so it's over 25 years since this has been in operation. Look at some of the early QSL cards. They're very interesting. Prefix. There's no W, no K, and some of them are pretty interesting, such as this one here, U9DAC. Of course, now that would be Russia, but back pre-1928, the date on this card is 1925. U stood for United States of America. It's an unofficial prefix, but that's what everybody used. Here's NU, North America, USA. There's another one. Here's C, that's a Canadian amateur. NC, North America, Canada. There's a lot of prefixes before 1928 when they're finally made official worldwide amateur prefixes. So there's some pretty interesting cards here. Why don't we move back in here and moving from the spark room into the small anti-room here. You notice, of course, there's a switch on the wall that turns off the lighting. You throw the switch up and it turns on the panorama of the Marconi equipment. So this is Guglielmo Marconi from equipment from early 1902, 5, 1907 era up until 1912. Because this is actually the equipment that was used on the Titanic. Up on the wall, I hope you can see just 2 black spools there. That's the magnetic detector. Very poor sensitivity, but very reliable. It would operate when the ships are bouncing around and vibrating, when a lot of detectors would not. So it's very reliable detector with terrible sensitivity. Below that is the Marconi multiple tuner. So Marconi was the first to use a tuning device to try to separate by wavelength different signals. Then down there's several Marconi keys, the Marconi code book, some Marconi coherer detectors, relays, inker to ink the message when it came in. On the extreme right is the 10-inch emergency spark transmitter. So that operated off of batteries. It could reach quite a distance. This is actually the transmitter that the Titanic used most of the time when they were sending their CQD and SOS, because their big 2.5 kilowatt 500 cycle synchronous rotary gap transmitter, which you just heard in the other room, one similar to it, that transmitter required motor generator sets that were down in the bowels of the ship. It was very quickly underwater, so the big powerful transmitter had no power to run it. But these ran off batteries, accumulators they called it, so they stayed operating throughout the duration. And then finally on the far right on the wall is the charging panel for the accumulators. So this is some of the rarest equipment we have. Actually in the museum is this original Marconi equipment as used on the Titanic. And of course that was Marconi's claim to fame, was his niche was maritime communication. So if you throw the switch then in the down position, we'll turn off this light and turn on, putting the switch in the down position turns on the lighting, as little as it is, that original early light bulb. For the United Wireless Telegraph Company, whereas Marconi had the maritime business sewn up, there was indeed a need for point-to-point long-haul communication, and the company that did that very well was something called the United Wireless Telegraph Company. Like Marconi, they also built their own equipment. Their transmitter was on the far wall, a spark fixed gap transmitter. The bank of capacitors on the bottom formed part of the charging network for the spark. The spark is actually inside the box in the center of the helix, the coil on top, with a little adjustment knob on the top where you could adjust the distance between the gap. So that's this is a United Wireless transmitter, and on the table you'll find their Type D United Wireless tuner, and that was also a could adjust for wavelength, and it had a crystal detector. So that was the United Wireless standard station setup. And on the bottom, down on the floor, is their high voltage transformer to excite the spark. So this is the United Wireless. United Wireless had some pretty good famous customers. The Great White Fleet, you may have heard of, which is the United Fruit Company, was plying their ships up and down the East Coast, delivering fresh fruit, bananas, and what have you from Central and South America, and they needed constant communication about when they would be in port, what kind of products they had, etc. So they depended on the United Wireless. Tire companies depended on United Wireless. They had their rubber plants, again in South America, Central America, and they had to keep track of all that operation.